Thank you for a great question. If we understand the concept of hell to refer generically to any kind of post-mortem divine punishment, we don't really see it at all in the Hebrew Bible until the very latest passages. And then we see significant innovation and development within Greco-Roman period Jewish literature. And we see a few different conceptualizations of it being used inconsistently within the New Testament. And it's not until after the New Testament that we see an attempt to systematize and formalize a concept of hell based on kind of an overview of all of the Bible. But throughout most of the Hebrew Bible, the post-mortal existence is the same for everybody. The word Sheol just refers to the grave, the underworld, the abode of the dead for everyone. And that existence is kind of murky and not well understood. But there seems to be some kind of existence for the deceased. There seem to be some kinds of threats of danger, which is why we see grave goods that include apotropaic elements or items that ward off evil. We see the living petitioning the deceased for strategic information, for help in navigating their own interpersonal relationships. So there's some degree to which the deceased are understood to continue to exist. At least their agency is understood to continue to exist. And the invocation of the names of the deceased is in some sense understood to prolong that existence or benefit them in some way, shape, or form. Now, when we get down into the Greco-Roman period, some of the very last passages written in the Hebrew Bible, passages in chapter 12 of Daniel, the very last verse of the last phase of the book of Isaiah, seem to refer to the notion of some kind of torment in the afterlife. And this torment is associated in the Greco-Roman period with the Valley of Gehenna. And now this is the valley where kings were supposed to have sacrificed their children in the pre-exilic period. And so in that Greco-Roman period becomes a symbol of divine punishment and of suffering. But we have a few different concepts of post-mortem divine punishment that arise in this period. We have the concept of annihilationism, where upon death the wicked just cease to exist. We have a concept of temporary conscious torment followed by annihilationism, so there's some period of punishment, and then the wicked deceased will cease to exist. And then we have the concept of eternal conscious torment. Now, in the Greco-Roman period, this is very inconsistent, and it's popping up in different places for different reasons. I would argue that the concept of divine punishment in the afterlife is developing in concert with a concept of divine reward in the afterlife, and almost certainly in response to the great deal of suffering that the Jewish people are experiencing under the hands of oppressive empires. And so a lot of this is coming from contemplation of the problem of evil. What is going to happen to those truly wicked people who don't seem to suffer any divine consequences in life? Well, maybe they are suffering consequences in the afterlife. And so we have different ideas about what that suffering might be like. When we get to the New Testament, we see all three of these concepts of divine punishment in the afterlife represented, as well as in apocryphal and pseudepigraphical literature from before, during, and after the composition of the New Testament. We see the Gospels representing Jesus, representing all three of these positions. Interestingly enough, we don't see any such concept anywhere in the genuine Pauline epistles. And then we see Revelation using a lot of apocalyptic imagery, which is very closely associated with the way Greco-Roman period Jewish literature is representing divine punishment. We also have to note that the concept of Gehenna as a place where bodies were disposed of, or where there were perpetual trash fires burning during the period of Jesus' life, that is not supported by any archaeological or any other kind of data. That is a tradition that developed many centuries after the time of Jesus. So that is not an explanation for how the New Testament is representing this concept of hell as Gehenna. It's not until after the New Testament that we see eternal conscious torment kind of bubbling to the surface, becoming formalized as the main concept of hell. In the medieval period, we get some literature that begins to expand on and innovate on concepts of hell, and we get an accretion of lots of different imagery that between the medieval period and now shakes out to give us the concepts of hell that have become popularized today in our media. But that is the end result of many centuries of innovation and development on a concept that really starts in the Greco-Roman period, the very last passages in the Hebrew Bible, and which is really developed within the apocryphal and pseudepigraphical literature of Greco-Roman period and late antique Judaism before it becomes formalized within medieval Christianity.